Hollywood and the film industry have often made the decision to embellish certain details of historical events they've deemed worthy of turning into a film, whether that be through the creation of composite characters in order to present a multitude of people that the limitations of film wouldn't allow to be properly represented, or those that wish to rewrite history itself, as we later see with the film U571. What I want to explore is why the World War II films choose to embellish certain details of what are already powerful events in order to translate them to film, whether that be to help the audience identify elements, or simply because the events being showcased were not deemed powerful enough. I will focus on films based upon true events, including Dunkirk, U571, and A Bridge Too Far. In some cases, films and directors may choose to alter certain facts and details in order to help the audience further understand specific elements of the film, such as differentiating between the Allies and Germans. One such example is Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Dunkirk was deemed as one of the most historically accurate depictions of the event. However, Nolan made the decision to paint the noses of the German Bf-109 planes in the aerial combat scenes yellow, which was something that did not happen until months after Dunkirk. In an interview, Nolan states, "We need to tell the story in a clear way. There are going to be things that we have done that are inaccurate, but they are done with eyes open and with respect for the real history." As Nolan said, it is important for the audience to be able to clearly follow the story, and if that requires the changing of minute details, then it is well worth it. Such changes, like changing the colour of the plane noses, are only going to be picked up on by a small handful of the audience, such as the true history buffs, whereas they will go completely unnoticed by your average audience member. With World War II taking place over 75 years ago, there are now dwindling numbers of available vehicles and genuine artifacts from this war, making them increasingly hard to come by and even hard to find those that are still in working order. Such a rarity has led to filmmakers having to make use of available replicas or even CGI, and Richard Attenborough's 1977 classic, A Bridge Too Far, is no exception. While the film itself represents the events of Operation Market Garden in a concise and accurate manner, there are a few changes that were made due to the shortage of authentic World War II vehicles. While such vehicles do exist, they do not exist in such quantities and availability to create a realistic picture of their numbers in the war. In order to get around this, A Bridge Too Far created somewhat accurate, fake Sherman tanks, which were made through the welding of Land Rover chassis. Something you can easily notice in this scene, in which the last tank before the cut appears to be floating on its tracks. Such a method is extremely useful for allowing a fairly accurate portrayal of the vehicles without the reliance on the very few that are left. While A Bridge Too Far used this method to create the illusion of waves of Sherman tanks, they took a different and more historically inaccurate route for German tanks. Instead of using an irrealistic tank such as a Panther or Tiger tank, they instead opted to use a Leopard tank, a tank that was not created until 1965. Due to the nature of the scene in which the tanks are used in, it is understandable why a fake could not be used, as well as why one of the few originals that are left. In the scene, they are forced to drive through explosions and the rubble of previous battles, which would be impossible for a fake created through the welding of Land Rover or other car chassis, as was done previously. These situations leave producers and directors with a dilemma of whether they reduce the action in the scene to allow for a more accurate model of the era-relevant vehicle, at risk of leaving many scenes static and somewhat boring, or instead using the historically incorrect tank or vehicle to allow for action and combat with the hopes of only a few members of the audience noticing. As the goal of most films is to create a powerful experience for the audience, many directors and producers would elect to use the latter. Without fully realising it, the audience can have a great impact on the historical accuracy of films. As films are targeted to specific audiences, elements of the film must be changed to cater to them. One such example of this happening within a World War II film is Jonathan Mostow's U571. While U571 is ripe with technical inaccuracies, it also rather offensively attempts to try and rewrite history itself in order to appeal to its American audience. U571 is based upon the event of the capture of the German U-boat U110, which was perpetrated by the Royal Navy in 1941, before the US even entered the war, whereas the film depicts the events as being done by the US Navy alone and unaided, completely ignoring the real life events and the sacrifices made by those who are involved. While watching films based on real life events, it is important to remember that they are just that, films. Films that are made for the most part to appeal to a specific audience in order to make a profit, with historical accuracy becoming a mere afterthought. In conclusion, there are three main contributors towards a film's historical accuracy, all of which must be balanced for the film to succeed. The first being the audience's understanding. The audience must be able to follow and understand the narrative of a film. If it is historically accurate but almost impossible to comprehend, then the film will most likely fail. The second is logistics. It has become increasingly hard to find real World War II vehicles, leading creatives to use either non-historically accurate vehicles, CGIs, or fakes. The third is the target audience. For a film to be successful, it must appeal to its target audience, and in some cases that means changing details or even history to do this.